Hello, Matthew Harvey here, author of the Bernicia Chronicles and Wolf of Wessex, Time for Swords, and it's Friday. So, yeah, seems like it's time to go live and do my usual quick catch up and just say what's been going on and what I've been doing and where I'm at. And so, good evening, Julie, who's just messaged. So yeah, I just thought I'd give a quick recap of the week and what's been going on. So first things first, my ears are still ringing. I went to a concert last night with a friend of mine, and it's the loudest gig I've been to for ages. It was it was really good, but it was a band called Airborne, who you may have heard of, and they're very similar to AC/DC. They're Australian, very guitar-driven rock, and everything full throttle. No ballads, never slowing down. And the lead, the front man, the lead singer and guitarist is absolutely mental. I bought the tickets on an off chance because they were doing a warm up gig in Frome, which is just near, quite near me. And they're playing, big festivals all over Europe and later South America and North America and all over the place over the next few months. And this was like their warm up show, and yeah, absolutely incredible. I mean, so full on, but so loud, and my ears are absolutely wrecked. And this is, it's nearly 24 hours later, and I've still got tinnitus from it. So that's fun. But if you like rock and you want to see a proper rock band that go out full on energy, no let up, and great show and great showman, and just proper old school heavy rock, then you could do a lot worse, and I don't think you could do much better actually than Airborne. So I know. Ah, yes, my sign, the on-air sign. I was getting prepared, and I was just about to go live. I realised, and the way I plug it in, I've got like a little USB pack thing, power pack that I plug in next to it because the cable doesn't reach a plug. So I I'd have to go running back into the house to get it, and it was too late. And I didn't want to disturb Blue, who's asleep down there in his bed. So you're right. I need to make sure that in future I don't forget the lit up sign, which is great, and obviously is popular because every time I don't put it on, it gets mentioned. So I'll try not to forget next time. Got too many things on my mind. So anyway, so my ears ringing. My ears are ringing, but I had a good time. It was great to see my mate Roger, who plays the bass guitar, and he used to play in a band with me, and so we caught up and had some food, and then went to see the band. And both of us, by the end of it, we both said, "Gosh, that was a bit too full on." By the end of it, our ears were shot. But anyway, last weekend I was off having fun driving. I'll just have a quick drink. Driving all the way up to Northumberland and Bamburgh, and yeah, and that was like, it took about 8 hours to drive up there. It's probably about a 6.5 hour drive without stopping, but obviously you need to stop. So about 8 hours drive there and back, just for really one full day of this conference. So it's a bit of a trek. By the end of the weekend, I was pretty tired, but definitely worth it. And I thought I'd just give you a really quick rundown on what the conference was about, and I've got a link here actually to the project. So it's all about the Bamburgh Bones, and the Bamburgh Bones project. You've got the website there. You can go and have a look, but it's got lots of information, and it's all about the Bole Hole burials that were found just to the south in the dunes, just to the south of Bamburgh Castle, and they date back from the time of my book, so like sort of 7th century, 7th or 8th century, something like that. And they found, I think it's 105, 106 bodies there that were buried, and the project has done a lot of archaeological work, obviously, in investigating the history behind them, where they came from, and all stuff like that. And the thing that really attracted me, well, I mean, the history obviously is really linked to my books, but it's linked to my books because when the dig started was in the late 90s, and there was a documentary in 2001 that was on, I think it was on BBC, but it was on British TV, called Meet the Ancestors, and it had an episode about Bamburgh and about the Bole Hole burials. And it's what actually I saw in 2001 that sparked me picking up, starting to write The Serpent Sword, which was the first book that I wrote and the first book I later published. And of course, without that, I wouldn't now be a full-time writer. So it means a lot to me, and it meant a lot to me to go there and see this sort of closing conference of the project when they're wrapping everything up. Because what they've done is after doing lots of study on the bones and lots of research over the last 20 years, they've in 2016 they reinterred the bodies in a newly refurbished crypt underneath St Aidan's Church in Bamburgh, which is very near. I mean, it's a couple of 100 meters away from where they were buried, and of course, probably on the location of St Aidan's Church, where Aidan, who appears in my books, actually founded a church in Bamburgh back in the 7th century. So contemporary with them, although the building now is a little bit more modern. Of course, it's been changed over the years, but the location is still that sacred Christian burial location. And for the most part, I think these burials were Christian. And so it's quite moving, really, the story of it and how they, I think, after they've been, when they're dug up from burial grounds, often they're left in museums in boxes, and they don't end up getting reinterred or reburied. Sometimes they're reburied straight away in the same location, but more often than not, that's not the case. And so this was quite moving, really, the fact that they've done that and they've laid these bodies to rest again, and all very tastefully done. But a lot of information has been found out about them before they were reinterred. So it was really interesting. There were talks by osteologists and people who've studied, archaeologists and people who've studied the bones, and I met up with Craig Huddart there, who's an archaeologist I've spoken to a couple of times, once on the channel, interviewed him. He interviewed me for a podcast before. The Bole Hole burials was the first dig that he worked on as an archaeologist, about 20 years ago. I met some other archaeologists that he knew that were there talking that I'd not met before, but it was great to meet them. And I learned a lot of stuff. I heard Graham Young speaking. He's been working really in Bamburgh, and he's the expert of Bamburgh. He's been working on digs at Bamburgh Castle now for since the late 90s, and he's an absolute font of knowledge of the history of Bamburgh and Bamburgh Castle. So it was incredible to meet him and chat with him. And afterwards, we went to the pub in the evening and had a chat with him. And so that was great. Also met Max Adams, who some of you might know, has written several books, including Alfred's Britain, I think it's called. And of course, he wrote also The King in the North, which I've got a copy of somewhere over here, which I can actually show you. Yeah, The King in the North, which is published by Head of Zeus, that's who's my publisher as well. And you may even recognize the style of the maps, as they're the same publisher. They got the same cartographer to do the maps for my books, which are set in the same times. This is like the non-fiction companion, really, to the Benicia Chronicles. Obviously, as you can see, I've used it and got bits of paper in there for important sections that I go back to. I've never met Max before, but he did a talk, and he's been involved. He was an archaeologist before he was a writer, so he's been involved in the whole thing for a long time. So he was there talking, met him, and that was great to talk to him as well. On the first night, actually, they had a thing. Like a night of poetry and really sort of creative arts that have been inspired by these bones. and that was interesting as well. And I met, well, listen, the poetry was itself was interesting. Some of it was a bit too experimental for my liking, and some of it was a bit, whatever. As poetry is, I mean, it's thought provoking, but sometimes it lands and sometimes it doesn't for me, but it would have done for other people. Yeah, Hutabayans or Hutabians. Beans, I think it should be a Hutabians. So yeah, a heap of bones in the dialect of Northumberland, which I have just massacred. But yeah, poems inspired by the ossuary at St Aidan's Church. So that was good. And as part of that, they had a guy playing the piano and singing some of his new music. And he's a guy called Mark Deeks, who's a musician who is part of a band called Winterfilleth. And that's a death metal band. I think they're death metal. What do they describe as? Black metal. Okay, English black metal band, which, if you want to get an idea of what they sound like, it's very fast and furious for the most part, and lots of growly, very shouty sort of lyrics. So not really my kind of thing, but obviously lots of people like them. But he's released something. He's from the Northeast, and he's released a CD under the band name or the artistic name of Arth, which is AR and then a funny Anglo-Saxony type D letter. I think it's Arth. It might be Ard, but yeah, something like that. And it's called Take Up My Bones, and there's the cover artwork. And it's about, as you might deduce from the cover, which is that's showing Cuthbert's Cave, which is near Bamburgh. It's all about Saint Cuthbert's bones and how they were carried around by saints. Oh, here he is. There's Mark himself, Mark Deeks. Whoops. And yeah, it's all about the monks carrying the saints' bones around because they were scared they were going to be stolen by the Vikings or someone. So when Lindisfarne was attacked, they thought they didn't want. I think it's around then actually. They didn't want the bones to be stolen, and so they carried them around, and they supposedly went to all different places around Northumberland and ended up in I think Durham Cathedral. And of course, when they opened up the box, the saint's body was incorrupted, which seems to always be the way with saints. But anyway, that was interesting, and he played it just on the piano and sang. He played some songs, but it's actually doom metal is the description of the type of music that he does, which sounds pretty heavy. Strangely, I mean, it's a lot of it almost sounds like Gregorian chants and stuff. I bought the CD, I listened to it. It's on Spotify and stuff, so you can go and have a listen to it if you want. It's interesting, and it's actually very quite slow and somber and quite melodic. And he plays the piano, so it's very piano based, really, and there are guitars and drums, but it's all, I don't know, it's quite tasteful, really. A little bit too somber, maybe, but nice background stuff. You probably wouldn't want me to say nice background stuff, but it was nice in the car listening to it. Although I did start falling asleep a little bit because it's a little bit too slow, so I needed something a bit more up tempo. But yeah, go knock yourselves out. Go and have a listen. Part of the thing was I got this book as well. I'm actually wearing a T-shirt that I got there. Look, the Bamburgh Bones. This says Accessing Aidan, which is the title of the book, which I think the project was originally called. But yes, the story of the Bamburgh Ossuary, and it's a lovely book, full colour, lots of information, all about the history of ossuaries and the history of this specific ossuary and the history of the place and the buildings and how. The archaeology of the Bowl Hole by Graham Young. I mentioned him before. Professor Charlotte Roberts talking about reading the bones. So she was the osteologist that was talking. Jessica Turner talking about ossuaries. She was at the talk as well, talking about St Aidan's Church. Robert Mckibben, so he was there doing a presentation about the church, and he was really interesting. So yeah, it's got lots of interesting stuff. And actually, I bought this book, but I've also won in a competition on their social media a copy as well, which they're sending to me. So I'm going to have an extra copy of this. So I'm going to think of a way that I can raffle this off or give it away as a prize or something. So let me think of how to do that. But keep your eyes peeled, and over the next week or two, I'll think of a way of working out who to give it to. But if anyone wants this, I think it's a pretty interesting book. So I think that's probably about enough about the Bamburgh Bones thing. It was great, and I enjoyed it. What else? Oh yeah, so another thing this week. So came back, obviously was back on Sunday, worked all week, and I finished my first draft. And you might recognise this from a while ago when I'd finished a book. So this is one of the folders that I use. You can see my note tag things here. But yeah, so I finished the novella that I'm working on, and it's that long. So what is it, 60 something pages long? So I'll be working on that next week, reading through it the first couple of days next week and polishing it up. But we'll see what I do with that. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. If you're a patron on Patreon, you can read the first few pages of it, because I put the first page up on there. And I'll answer some questions in a minute. I've got a couple of questions posted. But yeah, so if you want to read that, I posted the first page or so on Patreon. So check out, if you go to matthewharvey.com, there's a link to Patreon on there, and you can become a patron. And I'll be sharing more snippets of the book as I progress, of the novella as I progress. And I might not decide to publish it. I'm not really sure. If I don't publish it, then I'll probably end up just sharing the whole thing on Patreon. But even if I do publish it, I'll probably share either all or most of it with patrons as I go along with this one, I think. So, if that seems like something you want to do, then check it out. There's over 100 posts actually on Patreon now, so quite a lot of exclusive stuff there. I talk about stuff that's a bit more personal maybe than I talk publicly on social media, and I ask people for their opinions and get feedback from the patrons. So if that's something you're interested in, then check it out. Also, wherever you're watching this, if you're watching on Facebook, like and follow the page. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and click to see notifications, click the bell or whatever it is you need to do. That would all be great as well. And lastly, in terms of things I'm going to cover, because this is just my little update thing. On Monday, so not very far away at all, this Monday, we have the latest of my interviews with other authors, and this time I've got the inestimable, if that's a word, Ben Kane. So Ben Kane, who I'm sure anyone who likes historical fiction will have heard of, writer of tons of books about ancient Rome, and a real authority on Roman history, and very interesting experiences that he's got. That he's done all sorts of things, walking in full kit around the Hadrian's Wall and Italy and around Rome and stuff. And he recently has written a trilogy about Richard the Lionheart. So he's moved now into the medieval period, and he's just announced that he's going to be writing a Viking book in the future. He's writing a 19th century Napoleonic book at the moment, and something else I can't remember, but we can ask him about that on Monday. So come along to that if you can, and if you can watch it live at 7:30, you can pose questions, and we'll take questions live. Patrons, again, on Patreon, you can post your questions in there, and I'll read those first. But if you come along, you can get your questions in live. If not, you can watch it afterwards. But it's always nice to get it live and get your questions answered. So you can ask me or Ben questions. So looking forward to that. And of course, bring a beer along or a drink of your choice. Doesn't need to be alcoholic, but if it is, then all good. Right. So that's that for the announcements. So Julie has a question here and just says, were all the bones male in the bowl hole or just to the south of Bamburgh? No, they weren't. I can't remember the proportion spread, but I think it was, reasonable number of women as well. And there were lots of children as well as lots of children. All the information, if you go to Bamburgh Bones, you can actually see information about all the individual bones. They've all been given names, Anglo-Saxon names, or at least Anglo-Saxon word to mention to identify each specific individual, and they've got the information that they found about them there, and which ossuary they're buried in. So an ossuary, of course, is a bone box, and they've been sealed into these boxes and then put into the crypt and sealed away into this crypt. But all the information's there. It's really worth having a look, and you can see, and it will tell you, what they've managed to glean information about, what they died or what their diet was, and if they had any injuries, and where they travelled from, where they've been born. And they can analyze the isotopes in the teeth and work out what water people were drinking when they were growing up. And so, it's quite interesting stuff that they're a very cosmopolitan group of people. You'd think that at that period of history that everybody would have been just from locally, from close to Bamburgh, but that's not the case. There's people from Middle East, Scandinavia, Ireland, all over the place, Scotland. So there's people from lots of places, south of England. So that made me smile, because I remembered hearing about this, I think, years ago, which is probably what caused me to have the idea of Bearbrand coming from the south of England up to Northumberland, the fact there are bones there. And of course, if you've read the Bernicia Chronicles, without giving too much away, but Bearbrand in the first book and in subsequent books sometimes goes to the burial sites just south of the castle to pay his respects. And so, we know of some of the bodies that are buried there in my books, at least. But of course, that's I've fictionalized that. But really interesting though. So go and have a look at Bamburgh Bones. And I think that's it from me. It's quite an early one today in terms of a live, and I think most people are probably out in the sun or driving off somewhere or swanning it, enjoying themselves, and not online right now. But if you catch up with this later on and you want to ask a question, then drop me a question and I'll answer it if I can. And look forward to seeing everybody on Monday. Don't forget, Ben Kane, best-selling author of all sorts of historical fiction, mainly Roman, but now moving into different time periods. Monday, 30th of May, 7:30 UK time. See you there, I hope, and have a great weekend. And thanks for your time. See you soon. Happy reading.